The U.S. nuclear power industry has had excellent operational history for the past 40 plus years. It is now the safest, most reliable form of electricity.
Safest?
Yeah. Nuclear power, which, it runs rain or shine. We don't face these problems of other renewables, which are, solar and wind, really, really great. Totally support solar and wind, but they need to be part of a more diverse portfolio because they're not reliable 100% of the time, right? A good visualization of how compact nuclear power and fuel is one fuel pellet, which is about the size of a gummy bear, produces the same amount of power as 1 ton of coal.
Mother. Holy cow. Before we get started here, I need to know if that last name of yours, Lemonick, is that like the Bernie Lemonick from Camp Kennebec?
It is. Good recognition there. Yes.
Well, I was, I wished ill of your, what is it, your dad or your?
So it's my husband's paternal grandfather.
Oh, grandfather. So I went to Pine Island Camp, also in the Belgrade Lakes on Great Pond, and they were the arch rival back in the day. So thanks for nothing, Lemonick.
That's really funny.
But that's not why we're here. We are here to talk about other waterways and other things. What I'm picturing you operating a nuclear power plant, 2 of them really, that could each power all of Portland for 20 years. And I'm trying to imagine the backstory that got you there.
Sure. I mean, I know I don't look like Homer Simpson, so it's maybe a little bit shocking. But it certainly was not just me single-handedly. It takes a huge team to operate those reactors. And a little bit of a plot twist here, they were on a ship. So I served as a nuclear engineering officer in the Navy. I was a naval officer for about 8 years. And most recently on the aircraft carrier USS Harry S. Truman. So yeah, worked with a really incredible team, about 500 nuclear trained sailors that operate those 2 reactors on board. And that was my foray into nuclear power. I really, really fell in love with it.
And okay, there's so many, before we get to it, how did you get to this spot? As a child, were you like, I'm going to be in the Navy, and then you bumped into nuclear power within the Navy? I mean, how does one like you end up doing a job like that?
Sure.
And by the way, thank you for doing it.
Oh, of course. And thank you for your service.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. I actually had a lot of fun, so thank you.
So I grew up in Indiana, pretty rural town called Angola. And that's where my father's from. So my father served in the Marine Corps. He was an enlisted Marine for 21 years. And so his service absolutely inspired my own. I actually grew up entirely in Indiana, did all 12 years of schooling there. But before him, my family had traveled a lot, following where he was stationed. And so I grew up kind of with that lifestyle in mind, and it was something that really excited me. So I visited the Naval Academy, really fell in love with the opportunity that presented.
So the daughter of the 21-year grunt sends
Yes.
the daughter to Annapolis.
Yeah.
Oh, who says the American dream is dead? What a story.
It was really touching. My dad was my first salute. On commissioning day, my dad.
Yeah, I know.
On. And yeah, it has been an honor to carry on that legacy.
Okay, that gets you in, and then you did way too well on a test at some point, and they're like, guess what you're gonna do? Unless you want to learn Farsi.
Oh, too funny, because I actually did study Arabic at the Naval Academy.
You did that test. I know what test that is. Is it called the ASFAB in the Navy or something like that?
No, it's not. The language tests have a different name, but my actual major at the Naval Academy was English, so it has nothing to do with nuclear power, with engineering. But the STEM curriculum there is so, the core is so STEM, that they allowed me to commission as a nuclear officer. So yeah, I really always liked both the humanities and engineering. So I really appreciated that opportunity to continue down an engineering path, even though I had spent my 4 years, reading books.
And do you go right on to a big, I mean, if you're a nuclear officer, you don't have a lot, it's a sub or an aircraft carrier, right?
Yeah. So I took a little bit of time to actually do a graduate degree. So I left the Naval Academy, went to University of Chicago, to the Harris School of Public Policy, and ended up doing a Master of Public Policy there. That's where I kind of, I
real
already
slacker,
had,
Sarah.
what?
You're just a real slacker. I mean, that's what the audience is slowly putting together here. Okay.
That's exactly right.
And then you became an astronaut, and then you deployed.
Yes. And then I deploy, I go to my first ship, which was a destroyer stationed in Spain. So a lot of the work we did out there was in the Med in the North Atlantic. Then I come back to the States, complete my nuclear training, and then arrive on my aircraft carrier.
Okay. Right away, you're in this, tell us this thing. How big is a nuclear plant able to power Portland?
What is the size of it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can imagine there's the actual core, the reactor core, which is a certain size, and then there's the entire size of the entire plant, which includes the turbines that spin the propellers of the ship.
Right. Big steam, turns the turbine, runs the, yeah.
Right. And so the entire plant takes up the width of the ship. And then, which as an aircraft carrier, you can imagine is fairly wide. And then it's about, 7 stories tall. So we're really taking up a lot of the belly of the ship.
70 by 140 feet kind of thing?
Yeah, I would say that's in the realm of the right.
Still, when you consider the output, 70 by 140 feet is like not that big. I think most of our audience, if I can pretend that I'm like most of our audience, think of a nuclear power plant as like 3 Mile Island, like giant towers and, hundreds of acres, or Seabrook, it's this overwhelming thing that seems sort of impossible to build another of. And here you are whipping around the ocean in 2 of them in, not a football field.
Yeah. It's surprisingly small for something that, like you said, can power an entire city.
And what is the power? Do you have gigawatts or mega gigs, or what is the sense of it? Is that right about Portland? 68,000 people for?
Yes, yeah. So it's 1.1 gigawatts for both combined. So 2 reactors outputting about 1.1 gigawatts. And you can imagine like a 300 megawatts SMR that can power the city of Birmingham, about 200,000 people. So multiply that by 3 at least.
This is 3 times. So this is all of Maine. I mean, there's 1.3 million people in Maine. I guess it's a little shy of all of Maine.
Yeah. So probably around.
Can we just back up the Truman and plug it in?
Well, that is something that people are exploring when it comes to decommissioning old coal plants. Something on the horizon is taking these small modular reactors. That's what we mean.
Dropping them in the same cooling tower.
Exactly. Just hooking them up to the outputs to the grid that already exist. Actually just swapping out, nuclear power is essentially steam power. So we'll take away the coal, we'll add fission instead. And we can repurpose all these coal plants that really should be decommissioned to meet clean energy goals.
Wow. What was your sense of the, how dangerous did it seem? How dangerous is it? There's emotion and science. Most of us have our sense of nuclear safety rooted in 3 Mile Island, in the 70s. And And what was the great movie with Meryl Streep? I don't remember now, but I'll think of it.
But I think there was one with Jane Fonda in the 70s as well, right? That made
Yeah, maybe Meryl Streep. Sorry, Jane. I got you mixed up with the other Democrat. But tell me about. You must have spent a fair amount of time on safety. Like, what are the risks? What's the environment like?
Sure. Well, something that I really love about the nuclear power industry is there's this shared culture around the responsibility that every nuclear operator has. I certainly found that in the Navy, in the nuclear Navy. This constant reinforcement that every single person who steps foot in the plant has this weight upon them that their role is not just for the safety of the plant, the safety of the ship, even the Navy. Like, this is about the Earth. We hold this incredible responsibility, and I found that absolutely carries over into the commercial nuclear industry. So I think it's something that, as a whole, the industry has done an incredible job of making a cultural pillar. Safety is the number one most important thing to every nuclear operator.
And what is the thing that goes wrong? What is the thing that you're protecting against?
Sure. I mean, the most salient, you can imagine accidents like Fukushima. So what we're really trying to prevent is any type of fuel meltdown. So anything that would result in fission products going into the air or into water that would then affect the people around the plant.
So escaping fissionable material, escaping the chamber.
Exactly. And when you see like the iconic, the domes, those concrete domes that you usually associate in your brain, that picture with nuclear power, those concrete domes are what are called containments. They're about 3 foot thick concrete with rebar reinforcements. That's what is intended to keep fission products within that volume in case there is any type of accident. So that's what we're really protecting against. But the U.S. nuclear power industry has had excellent operational history for the past 40 plus years. Right, we learned a lot from 3 Mile Island. There was a lot of restructure about how plants share lessons learned with each other. The Institute of Nuclear Power Operations was founded after 3 Mile Island to take responsibility of a lot of that work. And so it is now the safest, most reliable form of electricity.
Safest?
Yeah.
Multiply 0 accidents times whatever, and then obviously turbines elsewhere are not as carefully guarded, etc.
Yeah. I mean, you can compare it to things like coal. So coal is when you consider the supply chain, so all the way from mining coal, refining it, and then actually using it to produce steam and power, it is the most dangerous form.
Guys die. Yeah. A lot of guys die along the way, and then it belches acid rain and gives cancer to Mainers from Ohio.
Yeah. Then there's, crude oil. But if you rank all of these, and there's actually a Freakonomics episode about this as well. But if you rank all of them, nuclear power comes at the top as the safest. 0 public radiation deaths in the United States from nuclear power. And it also is the most reliable in that it's online more than 90% of the time.
The other thing that we don't sort of calculate, right, is that experience of 3 Mile Island feels like yesterday, but it was 1979, and technology evolves at blistering paces. Imagine your 1979 cell phone. No cell phone, other than obviously Maxwell Smart with the shoe phone, not a lot of cell phones. And today we're talking about implants. I mean, technology moves at such a pace. Have you seen that? And that's what made me think of the raw power of the Truman and your 29-person team running it all over the world, ports of call, all over the world. just the technology evolution, even in a small number of plants that the Navy may own, 30 or 50, I don't know the number with our subs and aircraft carriers. Are there other ships that have nuclear plants besides subs and aircraft carrier?
Nope, just subs and aircraft carriers.
Subs and aircraft carrier. Yeah. That we've got enough that we've had some agile product development, some iteration, even at government speed. There you are with this, whatever you said, 250 by 70 foot thing with 2 turbines that can power most of Maine. What do you think? What do you think happens if this goes onshore? What do you have to add to make could you just back up the Truman, pull out one of the plants, drop them into a coal plant? What's the difference in what has to happen when you're in a ship versus on land?
Sure. So the biggest difference comes when it comes to that protecting the public against fission products in an unlikely event of some type of accident, right? And so I spoke a little bit about those domes, the containment domes that we kind of think of when we think of an onshore nuclear power plant. That doesn't exist on a ship, right? You can't build a 3-foot concrete
thick cement,
over an aircraft carrier. It kind of defeats the purpose. But what we do use to protect us is simply distance, right? If the ship knew, if the reactors on the ship knew there's an impending problem, we may be running into a scenario in which there's some risk to the public, we can immediately go to sea, right? We turn on the engines, we sail out to sea.
And those things ain't slow either.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the big difference. Whereas, a nuclear power plant on shore obviously doesn't have that option. So much more expensive to build those systems to protect the public.
Got it. What the other thing that's gone on, though, kind of in the good column, is this notion of a small modular reactor, right? Can you describe the difference between the reactors that we think of and these SMRs, and what that means for our safety and reliability if we were to engage in that kind of thing?
Yeah. So firstly, a small modular reactor, the technical definition is less than 300 megawatts. So most of those legacy pressurized water reactors that we think of, so this would be like Plant Vogtle in Georgia that was just built. Those designs are called AP1000, and they produce a little over 1 gigawatt each. So a small modular reactor is about 1/3 of that. And there's even micro reactors that will produce very, very small, in the single digits of gigawatts. Single digits of megawatts. So that's the big difference. There's huge safety improvements with small modular reactors. So a lot of them are touting that they're what is called walk-away safe, meaning that operators could walk away from the plant and it would shut down on its own. It would cool itself, and the fuel would not reach a dangerous temperature, even with no human involvement.
And is that just a function of the mass of fissionable material being used?
It's very close. Part of it is
my first rodeo, so I don't really know what I'm saying.
The smaller core has a higher surface area to volume ratio, so it's easier to cool. Right, that higher surface area offers greater an ability to transfer heat.
And is that part of the packaging of the fuel itself, or is it just?
I would have to get more information on that.
All right, sorry, I'm going a little deep for whether we. But there is this idea of these plants that are, like you said, walk away safe, where you can overwhelm a bad event, a runaway fission, with just a finite amount, a reasonable amount of water. Is it water that sort of tries to reverse it?
Yeah. Most of them are cooled by water. That's exactly right. But this is in comparison to our legacy reactors, the ones that we currently have in the United States fleet, where you still need to have an external electrical power source, usually diesel generators, right, to power some pumps that will pump water to cool the core. And in comparison, these SMRs, a lot of them are moving towards a technology that does not require that, and are therefore safer.
Got it. Because you don't have to worry about, geez, both pumps crashed. Oh, damn.
Exactly.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah, which is exactly what led to Fukushima, was this inability to power pumps which cool the core.
Got it. Wow, that guy's so mad right now. It's like, oh, I should have checked the oil. Damn. What I love is that you had this experience in the military. So many people have the experience in the military, and then it's like not transferable at all. You have turned this into a really interesting sort of high-tech-ish career. Talk to me about this new company.
Sure. So as I was leaving the Navy, like I said, I knew I wanted to stay in the nuclear power industry. And I wanted to be part of this nuclear renaissance that's happening. So I stumbled upon the company I work for now, called Atomic Canyon, which is a small tech startup, quickly growing, that works on AI-powered software solutions for the nuclear power industry. So we're addressing this issue of knowledge management. We're starting with solving the problem of search. And I can describe the problem, right? These legacy plants have been running for 40 plus years. And they're carrying 40 plus years of records that they not only need to keep because they want to, but because they're legally required. And they influence a lot of decisions, right? They influence engineering decisions, regulatory decisions. All of these historical records go into new products that then are forwarded to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission as they decide, do we want to extend licenses for plants? Do we want to make modifications, et cetera, et cetera. So making all of those documents and records more available to operators, increases efficiency. It reduces these regulatory bottlenecks, and it opens up more time for operators to focus on things like safety and reliability, rather than spending hours of their job, sifting through different legacy software programs that haven't been updated in decades.
Got it. So it's so interesting because, Bill Gates is always trying to help us get to nuclear, and he's like, it's more expensive, but the main reason is because of regulatory compliance. And, so most people are like, well, then make there be regulatory compliance. But another idea is with AI is like, fine, as many forms as you want. We'll make them all available. We'll search them quickly. Sort of a giant bureaucracy management system. Are there enough plants for that, or is this just your gateway drug and then you're going to do more after that?
Yeah. I mean, we're interested in the entire industry, right? We're definitely starting with the legacy plants. Our development partner is Diablo Canyon Power Plant. They're the last nuclear power plant in California, located in San Luis Obispo. So we have deployed on premise at Diablo Canyon. So we installed NVIDIA GPUs on site. None of the data leaves their site, so it's incredibly secure. And they're able to find their documents more quickly. And then once we, continue to work with them to figure out what specific workflows they want to optimize in the future using AI, that's what we'll develop next. But definitely want to move into the space of new construction, as either legacy plants want to restart, like we're seeing with Microsoft and 3 Mile Island, restarting a plant, or constructing new small module reactors, even constructing new legacy. We're game for all the above.
And there's, I guess, there's always some sort of black swan event that makes breakthroughs in this space. It never sort of works in a linear way. And one of the black swans that I see emerging is not the concern to reduce our carbon footprint, but instead the concern to generate more AI compute. And that with that, you have the small number of sort of unlimited budget players, where instead of doing a community referendum, it's like, no, I'll do it alone, and then I'll buy all the power from it. which sort of shortens the political long tail of the thing, and maybe therefore gets these plants into production, and then therefore makes the public go, "Oh, I'll have what he's having."
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you're referring to these big deals recently. We just talked about Microsoft and 3 Mile Island, but there's Google signing a contract with Kairos, who are producing small modular reactors. AWS with X Energy, they're also a small modular reactor startup. So, like you said, we're seeing movement from these big technology companies to really buy in, and the difference between that and what we've seen for the past couple of decades is before, if you were to invest in nuclear power, it was going to be tens of billions of dollars, right? Vogtle, the most recent AP1000 that was built in Georgia, was quoted at $14 billion. And it came in
right on budget and right on time at
budget. I want to make sure I get this right. I'm pretty sure it came in at like $30 billion.
$30 billion. If it makes you feel any better, the think tank that I am chairman of studied the net that they put under the Golden Gate Bridge for jumpers, and it costed more than the bridge.
Wow.
Modern construction for you. A lot of rules. There were some birds nesting, some lawsuits about whether the birds would be offended by the nets. I don't know the whole story, but it's really scary. And yet continue with these. What was the most modern one that these AI consumers? What are those ones going to cost, or do we know yet?
Yeah, so that's the big uncertainty. So quick fact check. Yeah, Vogtle quoted at 14, came in around 31. So you can see why other investors have not been very attracted to making the same investment. The difference is small modular reactors are saying, hey, we think that we can reach an economies of scale. So basically, when they say modular in that term, small modular reactor, you can think of like Lego building blocks. We can build, this quarter of the reactor. This is an oversimplification, right? But this quarter of it can be built in the factory first, and we'll ship that over to the site. We'll put it together with the other 3 building blocks, and there you go. And so, the first couple, I think this is where the uncertainty comes in. The first couple of SMRs that we see, I think are definitely going to be very expensive because they won't have those economies of scale yet. And so it's up to these companies to prove, one, that it's possible, and two, that modular portion can really, come to be a reality.
Got it. That's really, and then like what we should be doing in Maine with cross-laminated timber houses, we can actually manufacture them efficiently in kind of a factory kind of way, and then you're sort of deploying Legos to put on site, and so you can centralize that cost and get efficiencies. Interesting. So the modular part is also related to the cost of constructing the thing.
Yep, 100%.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay, let's get to policy before we have to go. Obviously there's this sort of religion of fear based in real history about nuclear reactor, but there's also a religion of fear based in reality about global warming. So what would have to change to get, and the cost barrier that people talk about is related to the inability of anyone to get to scale because everybody's saying no. So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy that it's expensive. What would have to change to see agile module development begin to happen, where the modules start to get produced more and more, and then they get better and better, and now there's Lincoln Logs that people can drop in with cranes and make power without warming the earth?
Yeah. I think there's a couple ways to answer this. I think the first thing is changing public opinion. So firstly, just addressing the stigma that exists about nuclear power safety. So safety is definitely first, in my opinion. And then we need to talk about the price and the cost. One perspective you can take is that nuclear power is completely clean. And so if we add on the cost, the invisible cost of carbon emissions to other forms of energy, and then we compare the prices, I think they become much more comparable. The second is the price of having to import electricity, right? I think I read Maine imports about 70% of
Fourth
electricity right now.
highest in the country, our electricity costs.
Yeah. So the question is, how much do people value energy independence? And I know that's not something that you necessarily put a dollar amount on, but it certainly has a value. And nuclear power.
It's option value on future costs. If you
Yeah.
control something, and we right now can't, our natural gas driven electricity is massively more expensive than it should be because there's only one pipe coming in, and frickin' New York won't let us put in another pipe. So
Yeah. So
stuck.
you're subject to these
Right.
barriers. Yeah, and it's completely variable. There's no predictability, or at least the predictability is not in your hands, as compared to nuclear power, which it runs rain or shine. We don't face these problems of other renewables, which are solar and wind, really really great. Totally support solar and wind, but they need to be part of a more diverse collection
Portfolio,
of
yeah.
exactly a portfolio, because they're not reliable 100% of the time, right? I think offshore wind reaches about 30% rate of production, as compared again to nuclear power above 90. So nuclear power is a great supplement to a lot of the other things you already have in Maine's portfolio.
I forgot. I skipped over the fuel. I screwed that up. Let's go back to chapter 2 and talk about the fuel. So you use this stuff and then it's spent, but it's still reactive, right? What is the state of storing that fuel? What is the state of breaking it down? Where are we? Do we have room? Do people move it? Do terrorists blow it up when it's moving? What's the state of the fuel conundrum with?
Yeah, there's an interesting kind of story going on with that right now. The federal government, for lack of a better way to put it, really doesn't have a plan for nuclear waste at the moment.
They had the great big mountain, but then I was talking to the guy who runs Seabrook, and he's like, "Nope, we've never taken a single piece off site, and we've been running since 1989, and we got tons of room. So it's like we don't need it. They haven't done it."
Yeah.
Can you imagine seeing the truck go by in the night glowing?
Exactly. It sounds like you know all about this. The Yucca Mountain project was canceled, and so the current plants in the United States fleet, they're kind of off to deal with the waste on their own. But the thing is, they're doing it incredibly well. So I wouldn't say it's a problem. Like you said, every plant they put the waste in these big concrete dry casks. They look like giant cylinders. And they are very compact. So all of the waste that has been generated over about 60 years of United States nuclear power operations would fit in a football field about 30 feet deep.
Wow. It's not a lot.
Yeah.
Did you ever do a fuel change on the Truman?
No. Our fuel changes are very few and far between on ships.
So you didn't get to see like what's left. Is it like, literally a paint bucket size? Is it a...
Sure. I can't speak to that. But I think a good visualization of how compact nuclear power and fuel is one fuel pellet, which is about the size of a gummy bear, produces the same amount of power as 1 ton of coal.
Mother.
Yeah, which is
we ought to be able to store a fair number of these bad Nellies. Holy cow. Sarah Lemonick, you represent to me the idea of being inventive and optimistic rather than depressed and entrenched when thinking about electricity and global warming. Thank you for sharing what you know, and I hope you become a giant magnate with your new company. Most of all, though, thank you for joining us here on Maine for Keeps.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to Maine for Keeps. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to follow us on social media, click and share with your friends, or get on to mainforkeeps.com. If you have ideas for new content or podcast guests, or if you'd like to give us some money to support the effort, be sure to click and send. We're at team@mainforkeeps.com, and I'm at jb@mainforkeeps.com. Thanks. See you soon.